Alright, hey everyone, Sev here. Today I'm here to talk about my newest deck profile that I'm doing for the DDDs. So the DDDs have a sordid history. They've been around since the Arc 5 era, and initially they weren't very much supported. Konami, what they did was they trickled out support slowly and slowly, until eventually they got their own structure deck Pendulum Dominance. And after that, the DDDs, they exploded into meta capacity. They were a meta deck for 3 weeks. And then the Zodiacs came along and people realized that, Zodiac Dryden is a hell of a card. The DDDs really couldn't compete. And then they got curb stomped even more when Master 04 came out, and their main gimmick of being able to summon all the extra deck summoning types kind of just like kicked them in the nuts. Like they had no link monsters, no archetype link monsters that supported the deck. However, they'd get a nice link monster eventually in dual power called Triple D Abyss King Gilgamesh. And what Gilgamesh did for the deck is it kind of made it actually somewhat decent, but of course it needed a little more support, and that support it did get slowly over time. I think Konami has a theme here. Anyway, the support they got in Battle of Chaos with DD Griffin, Dark Contract with Patent License, DD, I think there's another main deck DD that I'm forgetting about, but oh my god, I'm literally free. There's another main deck DD, I think, but I'm just forgetting it. But Machinex also gave the archetype a new, more modern boss monster that actually gelled with the more modern competitive state of Yu-Gi-Oh! And then Patent License allowed you to not only recur resources, but also could freeze your opponent from summoning from the extra deck for one extra deck monster type that you control the DDD monster of. And sort of overnight with Battle of Chaos, the deck went from a major build huge synchro boards with Hulk, and you had I think Charge Warrior was played in some lists. But it went from a deck that kind of had no real identity and easily lost to cards like Dark Ruler and Nibiru. It went from that to having a pretty distinct place in the meta. Like, this deck was meta, and it still is a little bit meta. You can definitely play DDDs at a meta capacity, but the deck is extremely difficult. It became a huge high point when it came out that there was a whole DD's combo spreadsheet that you would get your opening hand, and you'd look for a specific card combination and matched up with the spreadsheet, and you could see the 1 card, the 2 card, the 3 card, the 4 card, and the 5 card combos that all got you to certain different boards. But now that need for a spreadsheet just isn't there, as the combos have become a little more simplified. But don't let that fool you. This deck is still pretty difficult. It's easily one of the most difficult decks that I've personally played with, but it's easily one of the more budget-friendly competitive options I've dealt with too. And I'm a high school kid. I'm broke as shit. Budget is all me. So, without further ado, let me introduce the DDDs.
我が魂を揺らす大いなる力よ、再びこの身に宿りて闇を引き裂く力となれ。ペンデュラム召喚、よみがえれ。 DDD 大地よ、アビスラグナロク。
Alright, everyone, Sev here. Here I'm talking about my newest deck, my latest deck, currently, DDDs. As I said in the previous section of the video, DDDs have had a very, very long history, and currently they are, I'd want to say, about a tier 1, maybe tier 2 deck. They're also pretty decently cheap too, but they're extremely difficult to play. However, we're just going through the deck profile today. The combo video will be a different video. However, I'm having tons of fun playing this deck. I have most of this is kind of pretty standard, and it's going to be sort of cookie cutter. However, I do have a few cards that are basically just like personal text and personal choices. So let's get right into it. We're playing 3 copies of DD Savant Kepler. Basically, you'll occasionally scale this card, but you never really want to scale this card. If you have to scale this card, you're getting kind of desperate. Like, your hand was not that good and you really need your skills to combo, so you'll scale this card. But basically, when you normal summon or special summon, you can activate one of these effects, and then it's a hard once per turn. You can target one other DD card you control and return it to the hand, or you can add a Dark Contract from your deck to your hand. You'll end up using that second, adding the Dark Contract effect, a lot more than the first one. And then 3 copies of DD Savant Copernicus. Like I said, again, you don't ever really want to scale this card because you kind of have no way to get it out of your scales. And that's one huge thing with DDs now, is you want to set up your scales to be ideal. Like, your ideal scales, from my experience of playing the deck, is go Divine King Rage and your Abyss King Ragnarok in your scales, because the Ragnarok provides a monster reborn, and your Abyss and your Divine King prevents you from taking effect damage from any of your contracts after you've taken any amount of effect damage once that turn. So yeah, Copernicus is a lot better of like a special summon. You don't really want to ever normal summon this card. However, there are some combos where if you normal summon this card, you can still combo off and get into at least a decent board. And when this card is normal or special summon, you can send one DD or Dark Contract card from your deck to your graveyard except itself. And that is also hard once per turn too. Next is 3 copies of DD Griffin. Griffin is an insane card. It kind of bridges together the main deck DDs. If you control another DD monster, you can special summon it from your hand, and then you special summon it from your hand once per turn. Then, if this card is Pendulum summon, you can discard one DD or Dark Contract card, draw 1 card. Then, if this card is special summoned from your graveyard, you can add 1 DD card from your deck to your hand. There are so many cards or combos with this deck that you can combo it with your Swirl Slime, and you can get onto like a full board with your Wave High King Caesar, your Deus, your Machinex, either your Groza or a Siegfried, and your a set DD Headhunt, and like some other, and complete follow-up for the next turn. So this card really is insane, and it isn't bad if you need to scale this card, because it's not only is it a scale 1, but you can also target a Fiend monster you control, and it gains 500 attack until the end of the turn. For each Dark Contract spell trap with different names currently on the field and in the graveyard, then you destroy it. So not only does it have a way to put it in your face-up extra deck, but it also has a way to remove itself so you can play a more ideal scale in your Pendulum scales. Next, we're going to get on to the more one-of Pendulum DDs, or for the remainder of the Pendulums. 1 DD Cerberus. You can honestly cut this for what's his face? Another copy of DD Orthros. But currently, this DD Cerberus is in Italian, so I do not know how to read it. So I'll just have the card up on screen right now. Okay. So it's a scale 6, and also it's a level 4, and it's another name too. So just in case. 1 copy of Orthros. This card is honestly really essential, not only because it can pop a spell trap, so it's an out to Mystic Mind. And it clears itself from the scale. Plus it's a lower scale, plus it's a tuner, plus it can special summon itself, plus like this card is not the level 4, so you can easily go into your main rank 4 combo with your I want to say Bisky Wave Caesar. I'm not sure if that's like the actual name for the guy, but the water rank 4 for this archetype. It'll come up in the extra X section. But yeah, this card is extremely essential. You can use it to make Groza, your Siegfried, and then like it helps you do so much. Orthros is such a good card. I love Orthros. Then 1 DD Savant Thomas. Savant Thomas is the we can't get Doom King Armageddon into the scales, so we'll just play Savant Thomas in the scale because it's pretty similar. Sadly though, it isn't the same, because you'll need to differentiate your combo line in order to get to a similar end board as if you had King Armageddon in the scales instead of Savant Thomas. However, Savant Thomas is still a pretty good card. He's a level 8 monster, and his Pendulum effect is during your main phase. You can add 1 face-up DD Pendulum monster from your extract to your hand. That is extremely good, especially with Master Rule 5, with the Pendulums needing the link arrows still. So you can easily recur back, or even you can recur back resources like Savant Copernicus if you cannot Savant Kepler if you cannot Pendulum summon it, because one of the hardest things in this deck to do is to Pendulum summon your level 1s. And yet again, you'll rarely ever need to do this, so it's fine. Next, on to the last of the DDD Pendulum monsters in the main deck. We're playing 1 copy of Go DDD Divine Zero King Rage. Interesting name there, but we're fine. Mainly, you'll want to scale this. I don't think in testing I've ever summoned this card as a monster. However, it still its effect is still not horrible. Its scale effect is if you would take effect damage, you take no damage. And then if you normal summon a level 5 or higher DD monster, you can do it without tributing. However, you very rarely use that second Pendulum effect, because I mean, by the time this gets into your scales, you've already normal summoned your Kepler or your Copernicus by now, so really you don't really use that. Its monster effect is when this card declares an attack, if your opponent's life points are 4,000 or less, you can make this card gain attack equal to your opponent's life until the end of the turn. And then you can tribute 1 other monster, apply 1 of the effects until the end of the turn. This card can attack directly. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in the spell trap zones. And then your opponent cannot activate card effects in the hand or graveyard. So if you do manage to get this out as like a monster, you can use it to turn off your opponent's hand traps for the turn. However, if your opponent gets greedy and wants to Nibiru you at the end of your combo, more times than not we end on the high King Caesar, and that's basically just your Nibiru protection. So I mean, again, this is really a scale because it's a scale 0, and scale 0s are one of the better scales in Pendulum decks. More often than not, they'll want scale 0s because it opens up your doors to a lot of Pendulum summoning. Then 1 DDD Oblivion Abyss King Ragnarok. At one point in time, this was like your main guy. You played 3 of them in the deck, and you used him and maybe Savant Thomas, and you made Duo Dawn King Kali Yuga. However, he's taken more of a back seat role because he's no longer as important to our combos. The only way we use him really now is as a scale, because he's a scale 5, meaning you can still Pendulum summon all of your level 4s. Then if you special summon a DD monster, except during the damage step, you can target 1 DD monster in your graveyard, and then any battle damage your opponent takes is half for the rest of the turn, and then special summon that monster, and if you do, take 1,000 damage. But with your Zero King Rage, you don't take that 1,000. And then that's a hard once per turn. And then its monster effect is if this card is normal or special summon, you can target 1 DDD monster in your graveyard and special summon it, and then you can only use that effect once per turn. Once per turn, you can tribute 1 other DD monster, and then target a monster your opponent controls, banish it. Like I said, you don't really get this on the field very often, but if you do, you are kind of struggling, let me just say that. Next is 3 copies of DD Swirl Slime. Swirl Slime is, you can activate this card in your hand to fusion summon 1 DDD fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand as fusion materials, including this card. Then you can banish it from your graveyard and special summon a DD monster from your hand. And then both of those are hard ones per turns. You combo this with Griffin, and if you have, I think, a couple, that gets you to your Abyss King, your Gilgamesh, which sets up your scales, which I don't think off the top of my head that can get you to your full combo. However, that is a great start to your full combo. 1 copy of your Necro Slime. If this card is in your graveyard, it can fusion summon 1 DDD fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from your graveyard, including this card. Its only purpose is to serve a way as another way to fusion summon from your graveyard. And then Vice Typhoon practically does the same thing, except you have to do it on the turn it's sent to the graveyard. If you don't fusion summon, if you don't use it for a fusion material, for fusion monster after you send it to the graveyard, during that turn, you can't use that effect, sadly. But again, more often than not, for your turn 1, you'll want to use this and save your Necro Slime for a potential comeback. Next is 1 copy of Lamia. If this card is in your hand or graveyard, you can send 1 DD or Dark Contract from your hand or face up on the field to the graveyard, and then you're supposed to summon it but banish it when it leaves the field. This card used to be super essential back in after DDDs got their link, and like people were like, "Yo, DDDs are crazy again." You'd play 3 of this, and you'd just try to like spam it with like Hulk, and you'd make a huge board that would lose to like a Dark Ruler no more. And then next, just to finish up the monster count, 2 hand traps. We got 2 copies of DD Crow and 2 copies of Effect Veiler. Crow is for the, I want to say, the Tyralement matchup. It could also be for the Sprite, but I'm not too certain about that. And then the Effect Veilers, just something to interrupt your opponent's combo with. If you want to, you can replace them with Infinite Impermanence. That is all of the main deck monsters. That's a hefty pack of monsters right there. Moving on to the spells and traps, will be in this section for just a wee bit. Next, first up is 3 copies of Dark Contract with the Gate. During your main phase, you can add 1 DD monster from your deck to your hand, and you can only use that effect once per turn. And then once per turn, during your standby phase, you take 1,000 damage, which more often than not, this will get skipped because Mocking X will cause you to destroy the contract. So 1 copy of Dark Contract with the Swamp King. During your main phase, you can fusion summon 1 Fiend fusion monster from your extra deck using materials from your hand or your side of the field as fusion materials. Then if you're summoning a DD fusion monster this way, you can also manage from your graveyard. And then of course, you take 1,000 damage. Yeah, this can be an extender. This can be a way to get you your 2nd copy of Flame King Genghis, which can get you another piece of extension, and then that can get you into your Siegfried or your Groza if you have Orthros in your graveyard. Plus, it gets you your High Wave King Caesar, so pretty nice. Dark Contract with Patent License. This card, I think at one point in time, was dropped from many DD builds, but I think it's pretty useful now with decks like Sprite and Tyralement, because if your opponent can special summons a monster with the same card type, Fusion, Synchro, Xyz, or Link as a triple D monster you control, except during the damage step, inflict 1,000 damage to your opponent. Also, while this card is on the field, your opponent cannot special summon monsters with the same type as that special summon monster for the rest of the turn. Then if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add a DD monster from your graveyard or face up DD Pendulum monster from your extra deck to your hand. Again, if like you're in a game 2 or game 3 scenario and you know you can kind of lock your opponent from summoning a crap ton from the extra deck, you can play this card and sort of prevent your opponent from playing until it's your turn, until your turn comes around, and then you can just kill them. 1 Dark Contract with the Witch. This card is also not very played, however, it is still a nice little piece of interruption. You can send 1 DD or Dark Contract card from your hand to the graveyard. then target a card on the field, and then destroy it. Then you can only use that effect once per turn. Then once per turn, all fiend monsters you currently control gain 1,000 attack during your opponent's turn only, and then once per turn during your standby phase, take 1,000 damage. We only use, really we only play this card for that main effect of being able to just pop an opponent's card on the field. I mean, that's a pretty nice piece of interruption. And then 3 copies of Pyre Reese map. At the start of your main phase 1, you can add 1 monster with 0 attack from your deck to your hand, but you have your life points after adding it to your hand. Until the end of the next turn after this card was activated, you cannot activate the added monster's effects or the effects of cards with its name until you normal summon that monster or a card with its name. So again, like, we just use this to try to get ourselves a copy of Savant Kepler to the hand, and Kepler can get our combos started. Next is 3 copies of Dark Ruler No More, just as a way to address completed board states in case we happen to lose the die roll in a second, or on a turn 3 play, because it negates the effects of all face-up monsters your opponent currently controls until the end of the turn, and then your opponent takes 0 damage, and then your opponent, of course, cannot respond to this card's effect with the monster effects. 2 copies of Pot of Desires. I'm a bit torn on this card. Like, sure, the deck needs the 2 draws. The 2 draws can be pretty amazing. However, Pot can really mess your day up. You can banish your Abyss Ragnarok, and your Divine King, and that is just really, it's not impossible to build a decent board on, but it's definitely annoying. And then for 1-of spells, we're playing 1 for 1 Called by the Grave, and then 1 Foolish Burial. And then for the last trap card in the deck, we're playing 1 DDD Headhunt, which is essentially just, if you control a DDD monster, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and take control of it till the end phase of the next turn, but its effects are negated and it cannot declare an attack. Also, it is treated as a DDD monster for extra deck special summon. So I mean, again, it's a pretty nice piece of interruption, and it can also force your opponent to like burn cards in order to make sure like either that effect doesn't resolve, or it can force them to like try to get rid of it because they don't want you to gain advantage off of it. Onto the extra deck, we're playing 2 copies of DDD Flame King Genghis. Basically, it's a sort of an extender. If a DD monster special summon to your field while you control this card, and then you can special summon another DD monster from your graveyard. Well, no, you target it. You target a DD monster and then you special summon it. Then 1 Flame High King Genghis. This is pretty nice because you can use it to summon even. You can target a DD monster you control when you special summon it, just like its normal Flame King Genghis. And then once per turn, and then once per your turn, when a spell or trap card or its effect is activated, quick effect, you can negate the activation. That's pretty nice. And then here is my personal choice. DDD Wave Oblivion King Caesar Ragnarok. It requires 2 DDD monsters. And once per turn, when an attack is declared involving this card, you can target one other DD or Dark Contract card you control, return it to the hand, and if you do, equip 1 face-up monster your opponent controls to this card, except the battling monster. This card gains attack equal to the combined original attack of the monsters equipped to it by this effect. This can easily be an OTK piece even through like a Nibiru. I've even OTK'd with this card through Nibiru in DDD, so this is a personal choice. If you want to play, you can easily play DDD Oracle King Dark. You can also play Beowulf, but Beowulf is not all that common nowadays. You could also play the DDD Super Doom King Purple Armageddon. That's also, it was used I think in a couple deck lists, but I don't know if it's still used now, but yeah. Onto the synchros, we're playing 2. 1 Groza Tyrant of Thunder, and then 1 DDD Christine Siegfried. What Groza does is, During your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can target one effect monster in the field, discard one monster, and if you do, negate that monster's effects until the end of the turn. And that's a hard once per turn. Then once per turn, if a fiend monster is sent from the hand of the graveyard, except during the damage step, you can apply one of the following effects until the end of this turn. Alright, to this card. Cannot be destroyed by battle, cannot be destroyed by opponent's card effects. Then your opponent cannot target this card with effects. That is a budget version of, oh my god, Baron de Fleur. So, like, I mean, this comes up sometimes and you have enough fuel in your hand in order to be able to make it, so. And what Siegfried does is, during either player's turn, you can target a face-up spell trap card on the field, and then the target has its effect negated until the next standby phase. Then if this card is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, gain 1,000 life points for each dark contract card in your graveyard, or each dark contract card that you control. Then onto the Exceeds, we're playing one Wave King Caesar. You can link him off and you can add one of your dark contract cards, but you can also use him as a bridge for Marksman Kingtail. And Kingtail, if you've taken any effect damage, you can detach a material from this card and then target a monster on the field. It loses 1,000 attack, and then you burn your opponent for 1,000 damage. And then you can link this off and you send a DD or dark contract card from your deck to the graveyard. Then one triple D Wave High King Caesar. This card can negate any monster, spell, or trap card. When a spell / trap card or monster effect is activated that includes an effect that special summons a monster, quick effect, detach one material from this card, negate the activation if you do, destroy that card, then you can make one other DD monster you control, gain 1,800 attack. And if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one dark contract card from your deck to your hand, similar to its mini king form. And then 2 copies of Triple D Divisor King Deus Machinex. Machinex is a really good card. What it essentially does is, on your opponent's turn, when they activate a monster effect, you can either detach 2 materials from it, or send a dark contract card you control to the graveyard, or no, destroy one dark contract card you control, then attach the opponent's card to it as material, and then you can also place this card in your Pendulum zone. However, you'll rarely ever use that effect. Plus, it can also threaten the next card, Divine Arsenal AA Zeus Sky Thunder. And once we all know what Zeus does, let's be honest here, it's not as impactful now, but it's still pretty scary to have a Zeus just get dropped on your head and you just not know what to do. And then 3 copies of Gilgamesh. 3 copies of Gilgamesh is honestly so essential. What it can do is, if you link summon it, you can place 2 DD Pendulum monsters with different names from your deck to your Pendulum zones, and then you take 1,000 damage. And then if this card is destroyed by battle with an opponent's attacking monster or an opponent's card effect while it's in the owner's monster zone, you special summon 1 DD monster from your extra deck or graveyard in defense position. Like I said, this is pretty useful. You use it, I think, a couple times on your first turn combo, and you can use it to make your Divisor King Deus Machinex. So that'll be my DD deck profile. I hope you guys all enjoyed. It was kind of a different one, I guess. I mean, it's a lot different. I've never profiled a Pendulum deck before, but this deck is really fun and really interesting, but also really difficult. It's definitely a deck that definitely challenges the player to really see things abstractly and see certain lines that you don't think would work but do. Other cards you could play in this deck is, you could play Small World instead of Pyro Map if you're not a fan of having your life points. I mean, you can get down to 3,000 life points by the time your opponent's turn rolls around, which is kind of bad. But again, Pyro Map is just kind of a budget option for Small World. So if you don't want to run Small World, then Pyro Map it'll sort you out fine. It searches your Kepler. But if you do play Small World, there are some Small World bridges that you will need to know. And then you could also play Dark Contract with the Eternal Darkness, because while you have 2 DD cards in your Pendulum zones, your opponent cannot target monsters on the field with spell trap effects, attribute them for tribute summon, nor use them as materials for fusion, synchro, or exceed summon. I mean, that's pretty nice. But I don't main deck that card, I just have it in my side deck. So, like I said, I'll have the cards that I mentioned that you can play up on the screen when I mention them. And then, yeah, I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in another video.